Well, guys, welcome back again. Danny B. How
Great
are
to be
you?
back, Matt.
And we got a special guest, Dan.
My friend Tim Donaghy.
Tim, welcome.
Good to be here.
Tim, we understand that you're flying in and flying out, so we got to make this fast for you.
Quick trip.
All right, Dan. NBA Finals.
And we're looking at Game 4 tomorrow night. If you remember, just a few weeks back, or less than a little over a week ago, we had Tim on the show. He had Golden State in 5. I had Golden State in 6. You had Cleveland in 7. Not looking good, Matty, my boy.
You know what? When the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor, did we give up? Right?
Okay.
Okay? All right? Who cried during Old Yeller? The Cavs are coming back, baby. You heard it here. That's why you listen to these guys. No, but seriously.
That's Tim-Tech. This is his arena, man. Madison Square Garden across the street. Let him roll.
Absolutely. I just think, my thought process was Golden State was just bigger, better, and stronger in every position other than with LeBron James, and they've proved that. Cleveland can't keep up with the scoring power of Golden State, and a lot of these games haven't been close. When it gets down to the last couple of minutes, Golden State just takes over, and I think that, unfortunately, these NBA Finals are going to be over very, very quickly.
Now, Tim, how much money is there in a Game 5, Game 6, and Game 7? Can you guesstimate how much money comes in?
Different people say different things, but it's at least $20 million once it goes past the Game 4. Just think about it. Ticket sales, concession, parking, advertising. Revenue comes in from so many different areas. And with gambling now being passed, just think about the other avenues that are going to take place with different situations in arenas, with interactive betting, with everybody sitting in their seats and working their apps and having something actually put on the chair to where you can interactively bet, live streaming.
How do you feel about betting at the arena, Tim? Your thoughts about, I'm okay with the gambling. I still have a problem with them betting at the
You're
arena.
okay with the gambling?
Well, of course. But at the arena, I don't like it. I don't like kiosks or the pronunciation. I can't even speak right, but I don't like it at the arena. What's your thoughts on that?
What their thoughts are is that, say you have a 25-point game, okay, and everybody's leaving, everyone's tuning out. Now all of a sudden you're betting, different prop bets, and it's going to be
Keeps them in a seat. Keeps them in a seat, right?
More engaged, and that's what they're saying. It's going to help keep fans in tune when games are out of control.
Well, coming from that perspective, that makes sense, Matty.
And you were saying that Mark Cuban likes that idea, right?
Yeah, I mean I've listened to a lot of interviews he's done. He says his franchise is going to double in value. Clippers just sold for, what was it, $2 billion?
Right.
Now all of a sudden these franchises are going to be worth $4 billion. I mean, that's unbelievable. I think Cuban paid $400 million for his, $400 million.
$400 million, yeah.
Yeah, now they're worth $4 billion.
Yeah, Dallas alone.
Yeah, probably not a bad.
Will he
return
sell?
on your
Is he
investment.
the type that'll sell, or he'll hold on to this puppy?
I think he'll have it forever. That's him. That's who he is now.
Why would you? If you got all the money and you're a sports fan,
Right?
and you can
Toy.
own a team, you keep it. Then you try to buy a league, right?
Rugby league, right, Matt?
Boom. I like it. Get the vision. Dan, so there's a lot of money being thrown around here, but there's a lot of money that people can make.
Well, I think on opening day in Delaware, I think they profited close to $400,000 on day one. On a Tuesday, mind you, when there ain't much going on, Tuesday afternoon. I think the net profit was close to $400,000 on day one at Delaware. So put that into perspective.
Wow.
Yeah,
Big numbers.
So for, a guy
On a
like
Tuesday.
you,
On a Tuesday.
Offering advice.
It's good for everybody, as we discussed in the shows previous. It's just good. We're waiting on New Jersey to give the green light. And Delaware, they started. Pennsylvania's barking, and West Virginia, I think Tim's in the hunt. Missouri or Mississippi's next. So there's a bunch of states.
Everybody's going to fall in line. Everyone's going to be involved. No one's going to pass up this opportunity to improve their area with the tax dollars. Nobody.
Well, how much money do you think will increase? How much more money do you think the leagues will make through sports betting? How many millions, billions? What's your?
I think the sky's the limit. I think when it comes to what they're going to do, like I said, with live stream betting, during the course of a game, I think the amount of revenue is endless, and it's going to be something that the leagues are going to capitalize on for sure.
Is the integrity tax going to fly in all states? Is it going to be state to state?
No, I'll tell you why. You should have had the utmost integrity right now. So to say that you need money for integrity, it should be at the highest standard right now. So all of a sudden we can't come in and say, we need money to look after this. You should have been doing it. It should be in place right now.
I think that the state of New Jersey told them about the hypocrisy, and you guys are hypocrites. This has nothing to do with integrity. It has to do with money.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Call it a slice of the pie fee. Don't integrity?
Our
is
inch, our
just-
cut. Just
yeah.
be honest. It's
Right.
our cut. It's what we want, and we'll keep our guys in line. That's simple as that. You can't listen. Read the book Personal Foul. That's all I can say.
Shakedown.
Shake down, money.
Right. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, guys, and we know that you're being generous with your time with us because you're actually got to get to JFK, but he's going to come back with us, folks. So stay tuned to Gotcha Covered Sports. We'll be right back. And we are back on Gotcha Covered Sports. Danny B, Tim Donaghy, and Matt McCarthy. Tim, you're going to be flying out of here. Speaking of people flying out of places, where's LeBron going?
No, I think it's between Houston and Philadelphia. I think if Houston can somehow get rid
Hold on,
of
Tim. You got to put that mic back up toward you so we can hear. Yeah.
I
there you
think
go.
somehow if Houston can get rid of Ryan Anderson's contract, Houston has a shot. And I know I was joking around earlier, but that's such a big situation. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in the trunk of a car somewhere because I'm telling you, that is just holding them back from being extremely competitive and taking Golden State to, another Game 7.
Was he ever worth that type of money to begin with, Tim? 25 mil?
I think early on he could shoot. He was one of those guys that could spread the floor, a 6'10" guy that could shoot the basketball, and just didn't pan out. He got hurt and banged up and didn't produce, so stuck with that contract.
That's a fat contract.
How much does Jerry Colangelo's kid with fake Twitter accounts steer LeBron away from Philly? Because I was driving up from Washington, D.C. in a monsoon, and I was in the bowels of Philadelphia, and I was stuck with Philadelphia Sports Talk Radio, and they were all just talking about LeBron coming to Philly. But do you think that affects a guy like that with that whole fake Twitter?
Well,
burner account?
obviously he's resigned. We know that he's resigned, so I think that they're going to get possibly the old GM from Cleveland, Griffin, to come in, and he's probably got the inside track. They had a great relationship. Who knows? Maybe LeBron ends up in Philadelphia.
Embiid don't want him there. He feels that he's going to mix up the little mojo that they got. You think he would, or you think he would help them?
I think it's going to be tough because I think him and Ben Simmons do the same thing. They're ball-dominant people that like to penetrate and dish out. They need to get somebody, I think, who's better off being able to create their own shot and shoot the jump shot. So I think they'd be better off with like a Paul George or a Leonard from San Antonio.
But Danny, everywhere LeBron's gone, he has won. He has instantly changed the franchise. Players around him have adapted. Look what he got to the finals this year.
It's 8 in a row. 8 in a row now.
You think-
33, next year he's 34. I don't know if I want to give somebody a 4-year,
Thank you.
several $100 million contract at that age. I think I'm better off going after somebody that's 27, 28.
I agree on that issue there. There's one thing I want to ask Tim. How do you rate these referees on a scale of 1 to 10? Obviously, 10 being the best, 1 the lowest.
Obviously, when you talk about Game 1 and the mishaps, changed the whole concept of the series. Really, Cleveland should have been up 1-0, took the wind out of their sails. I think they just never recovered from that, and they're struggling because of it.
Yeah, I said the same thing, Matty.
Was there one referee that you looked up to, like as a role model, or as a guy that you thought, okay, that's a really good referee, like you'd look up as a player, as a star?
Well, Joe
athlete?
Crawford, he was a guy that was a no-nonsense type guy, was from my home area, ran the game with an iron fist. Today, you can't do that. You really have to kiss up to the players. You can't be, throwing them out of the game and doing different things that they did 10, 15 years ago. So with that, it's a different era. You're basically a robot out there, just making the calls and no personality at all.
Yeah, I like old basketball. Who was it? Somebody posted the way it used to be back in the day. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago, but I liked when Dawkins and those boys were banging bodies, Lambier and the rest of those boys, and they got soft. I think the players got soft. I think the world's gotten soft, period.
It could be that because there's so much more money, they don't want to get injured. But I got a follow-up question on that for you. Like in baseball, you're going over the line as a player. When you're going to get ejected by an umpire for saying certain things. Is there a certain phrase or something that as a player you're getting the heave-ho from a referee?
You can't throw them out on one technical. It has to be two technical. So, anything where there's abusive language, you just can't stand that. That's something that everybody else hears, and everyone starts losing respect for you. So really, if they do that, you have to, step up.
Directed toward you, directed toward another player, or does it matter?
No, directed towards you, usually back and forth. They're cursing each other all night long.
Right.
Well, you can only imagine what goes on that court. And Tim shared some stories of what they do and say. And
In that Philly sports radio thing that I was caught in, that vortex, they were also talking about the odds on NBA teams winning next year out of Vegas already.
probably Golden State already the favorite.
Yeah, Golden State's a favorite. I think Philly's right there, not too far behind, banking on LeBron going there, I think. And Houston's right there.
So I got to ask you both. Is Philly going to win a championship without LeBron?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be tough. I think for the next couple of years, it's going to be tough to beat Golden State, and Philly's got to get through Boston. I think Boston's going to be tough to, for them to get out of the East.
I like what I see in Philly, and I'm not a basketball guru, but I like what I see in Philly. I said last year they were going to be good. I didn't expect them to do what they did this season. I thought it would take a year or two. I'm in the area. I get a lot of buzz about Philly, so I like what I see. And I'm not a Sixers fan, but I like what I see on the court.
And they were talking about how the previous GM was the guy that brought these players in and said, "Listen, you got to let me exhale. We got to blow this thing up. We're going to tank it. We're going to build. It's going to take some time." And then they brought in Colangelo. Look what happened with him.
Right. I think a lot of people wish Hinkie would have stayed around to see the fruits of his labor, and he did. He built it, and he got those guys in there. It was his plan that was put in place, and for some reason the league wanted Philly to get rid of him because they didn't like the process of what he was doing.
I'm getting the word from downstairs that we're basically out of time on Tim. Did you want to get a final
I just
couple
want to
words?
thank him for flying in for this interview. I know earlier he was on another show, and it's just good seeing my friend. And it's been about a year. Last time I was down in Florida to visit him and his family, beautiful girls. So it's always a pleasure to have him, especially in studio. Thank you, Timmy.
Good to be here.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, thank you.
All the best. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Donaghy on Got You Covered Sports, and we'll be right back after this. Hey, we're back at Got You Covered Sports. Dad B, hey, I'm Matt McCarthy, and there's the fantasy guru, Chris Ventura. And we don't just talk fantasy, gambling, and sports. We also talk numbers, Nate.
Oh, he's a
Rawlings.
madman. You got to love Nate. Nate, how are you, buddy? Are you stoked?
I am stoked.
Look at you. I'm turning you into a
very
star
well-
overnight.
I mean, I got a
Like
full
Barbra
3 hours of
Streisand.
sleep last night. I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
Pull your mic closer to you, kid, so we can hear your brilliance.
You can
Not
see it. Just
exuberant.
look into his eyeballs.
I think you
They
guys might want
spin
to mute
like
button
slot
on it.
machines. You get closer, you can see slot machines going in his eyes.
Nate, how much sleep did you have last night?
No, honestly, about 3.5 hours. But I have this app that I downloaded
This is a
that
good one,
plays
guys.
this
Listen.
frequency that helps me hit REM faster. So it actually allows me to be more efficient now with my days.
Okay.
How can I do that?
It's called binaural beats,
Binaural beats.
and it plays 2 different frequencies into either side of your head, so it helps your mind just relax right away.
That'd be great if I could get 3 hours sleep and
You go
still
to
function.
Dude, it is insane. I'll show you the app. It's
That's how
free.
you do that, ladies and
Tell me
gentlemen.
No, he's a madman. I love him. Every day's an adventure. He's funny. He's knowledgeable. He's a mathematical wizard.
Drive you up a wall.
He will drive me up a wall, over the wall, through the wall eventually if he don't stop. But he's a good egg, and I love him. And he's only going to get better. He's only going to get better. I mean, with the
Better at what? Explain to the folks at home, Dan, that are just tuning in, what he does.
well, why don't he explain what he does? Because I
Oh,
still
boy.
can't grasp this software, which is to me, it's worth millions of dollars to the right people, and I'm not right guy, if you know what I'm saying.
Hey,
but Nate,
nice.
explain the software in your own words, please.
And you have the school bell handy to cut you off at any given
Yeah,
point.
he'll
'cause
go on a riff.
I might need you guys to cut me off like these New Yorkers do when you're in traffic. You know,
Well, they run you over.
the yellow ones don't stop. To quote a legend.
But anyway, getting back, Lehigh, 19
so-
or 2000 and what was it?
Well, I
Okay, good.
Just practice.
he reacted well.
give
Go
me
ahead.
one letter of the alphabet there. You know, all right. So it all started, like any young adult who's not quite really an adult yet. I loved being right, and I don't get to be right that much because I'm left-handed. So when I do get the chance, but so I would be having these old school debates with these hardcore fans who are really up in arms about how much players are getting paid. And I'm just sitting here trying to figure out how I can, because I don't know how to justify it, but it feels like they're getting the money they deserve to me. So I just started analyzing it and trying to figure out how we can prove what they're worth. So, what's worth money? Winning games. How do
You came up with you went into your mad science
To
studio.
prove a point.
You had-
like any normal rational human being would.
flasks around. You came up with a formula. You're developing
The flasks were in high school. That was when I went through, like, I like to make, like Danny's kid's making slime right now.
They got some waiting for you when you get home.
Oh, that's awesome.
Special order.
I told your wife to look
Goes
out.
right over the
because-
mouth. You can't talk unless I let it off. Go ahead.
Oh, man. Well, the mute button doesn't work here, and I don't think the slime will either.
He got.
All
He
right.
was able, Chris. He was able to talk through a mute button the last show. Through a mute button. But anyway,
Genius.
Yeah.
so the software was designed to prove a point.
Yeah.
I'll summarize because if not, we'll be out of time. The software was proved to prove a point that this player is or is not worth his value. Perfect for a GM. Then you spin some fantasy tips into it with some fantasy.
Well, when it comes with betting, though, you just have to shift it from looking at value for the team to value for the consumer. And it's really not too terribly hard to do. And starting pitchers have the most degree of influence on a game of anybody. And so you just start from there, and then you look at how teams respond to it, and you just build it and break it down from there. But it gives you what I feel is a statistical edge. And maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but it's at least, turning a profit right now.
a hell of a profit. $100 player, and now this is all transparent games that he posted on Twitter
Okay.
in the month of May. April, I wouldn't let him post anything because I had nothing to go by. So I said, start throwing out some feelers out there in May. All transparent, $100 player, if they played every game correctly, that's the key word, made $3,200, $3,300, Nate?
$3,241.
To the penny. Was there any cents left over or anything?
No, I never make any sense.
He doesn't have any
That-
sense. But
that-
Dan, 3,200. When you say play the game correctly, you mean played as per him.
Well, yeah, do no more, no less. And that's the problem with gamblers. They do what they want when they want. If they like a game, they'll bet it. If they don't like it, then I don't know about that, or I'll half step. The system works if you play the system. To be successful, 57%, you have to do it 100%.
Right.
Not 40%, not 30%, 100%.
All right, and you brought up the word value. And before we get to Chris Ventura, our fantasy guru, I want to talk to you a little bit, ask you a little bit about value, Nate.
Okay.
Out of the Cavs Warriors, over the course of the series, from your standpoint in the gambling realm, what player brought you the most value?
Well, so to translate the term value there, we need to look at it in respect to the gambler. So it's who's helping their team either win games or helping to influence the totals to go over or under. So when you look at the player that's had the greatest degree of influence on his team winning games, we kind of have to isolate it to Golden State right now. And the guy who's had the greatest performance there on a consistent night in and night out basis has been Kevin Durant. So in Game 3 probably shows you the greatest example of that. He winds up with 43 points, and I don't believe anybody else on his team had more than 11. So I like to use something like that as a dominance trait, and I like to go back and look at dominance, which is what are you doing better than the second best guy out there doing the same thing as you? So when you think of dominance, you think of Babe Ruth and home runs, you think of Ricky Henderson and stolen bases. You just look at how much better you are than the next best guy out there, not
I
just
think
the
of
league
Danny
average.
B on 78th Street and wiffle ball.
The best, the best. Nobody can hit the slider, the sinker, or the in curve. What was that? You held it a certain way.
The riser.
Screwball.
Yeah, screwball.
Well,
Hey,
well,
Yeah, Durant's been
one
great.
way
He's
was
been
the riser,
dominant.
The other way was a screwball. So, all right. So on a team basis, you were going to find somebody of value, maybe in a small market. We were talking about that off camera. Explain that.
So when you're looking for value then on a team, we're turning our focus from what's going to help our team to who's carrying our team to who's maximizing their value relative to their role on this team. And for that, you have to almost exclusively look at either somebody who has just honed a craft like Steph Curry has with three-point shooting, or you need to look at somebody who has a complete two-way player. And I feel like Jimmy Butler, I'm nowhere near the NBA expert that a lot of these guys are, but I have grown up watching the Bulls, and Jimmy Butler to me was one of the best examples that I ever saw there of a two-way player, somebody who had this defensive tenacity that was there from the start, and he built his offensive game on top of that. So he doesn't need to be scoring 20-plus points a night to still be bringing you consistent value. So he's going to be doing something that's going to be worth wins on a night-in and night-out basis for his team. We just don't know if it's going to be on one end or both ends of the court.
And that's where you come in, because you take what he's doing and you process it, and then you take all your years of experience, and then you say, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Well, a lot of it has to do is where's the money going? How are the casinos reacting? Is it and again, if you go walk around this bar out here, Rock and Riley's, and on a Thursday night game or a Monday night game, you talk to 20 people. Go against the masses. And if you do that every Monday night, you'll make money. Because Las Vegas, as I said, has not been built on public perception. So a lot of what we do is look at what the squares are doing. we look at the public, we look at the point spread, and then his stuff, the blender, just co-signs everything. Do I rely on his system alone? Not just yet. No. Once he learns more about it and he understands the psyche of the gambler and how they think, he's going to be brilliant at this.
With all due respect, I don't think you should ever solely rely on software with something as dynamic as the human mentality in the betting public.
You mean as dynamic as Danny B, damn it.
Well, I mean, he's the dynamic interpreter of that data. But, I mean, again, it takes somebody crazy to interpret the insanity of the general public, so he's the perfect guy.
Not to mention, what about the human element to the players themselves?
And that's something that's
How
been
do you
very
correlate?
humbling.
Yeah.
Well, that's been very humbling for me, actually, this year, because I get so absorbed into the math side of it.
Right.
Sometimes I lose sight of what it's like to be a player. And a really good example was I was very confident about the Atlanta Braves a few nights ago going into play the Padres. They were great against lefties, and they were coming off a statistical outlier in losing to lefty Jason Vargas, which I'm sure Danny has had all kinds of ulcers from. Yep. And so going in, though, there was just a lot of splits, and it really looked like the Braves should win that, and I was very confident. And I liked hedging with the over at the very least, too, on it, so it wasn't a complete loss, but they lost 10-2. So, I mean, like, it just completely all over it. And it's because they made a coast-to-coast flight and had no rest days. The Padres, meanwhile, had an off day and didn't fly cross-country.
Right.
So I took that logic, and I applied it a few nights later when I was hearing about a lot of people giving out the Tigers as this hot pick against the Red Sox. And I looked there and I'm thinking the Tigers are coming off a doubleheader against the Yankees the night before. The Red Sox, meanwhile, are having a rest day. Tigers are losing an hour then, flying in less than an 18-hour turnover, going from Detroit to Boston, and they're starting a Band-Aid starter.
Get that bell ready.
So, yeah, I felt that there was absolutely no value whatsoever in the Tigers that night, and the Red Sox beat them 6-0.
Exactly.
Excellent. He got it in just under
And to pick up on that point, and here's another thing. Atlanta came off of a nice series against Washington, right? And you always know after they pull off a nice series win, there's always going to be that letdown, especially when you're on that plan. I told you about that, and you're
Regression to the mean.
I warned you, and I said the only problem I have is they're traveling, and you tried to justify it, but they're gaining time. They're not losing time.
Danny, I'm the kid, though, who learned by touching the stove.
Oh, I love this. I love this. The kid that touched the stove.
Well, I'm
and
trying
came
to-
I touched the
back.
stove exactly once in
I'm
my
trying
life.
to educate him and help him out, but he's stubborn because his math is brilliant, and it's hard to argue with a brilliant guy.
That's why you need the combo. You
Yes.
need the math side plus the human element side, the
And
psyche
experience.
side.
I'm
Experience.
dumb, but I ain't stupid. I touched the stove once. A dumb guy touches the stove once. A stupid guy touches it twice.
And what'd you
All
do? Put a
All right,
pinky on
gentlemen.
it and bang? Go ahead.
No full-on
gonna bring
finger. I
us-
was about 4 years old.
We're going to bring a stove in for you to touch for the third time when we're
Little
talking
Betty
hot
Crocker.
stove during the winter. But in the meantime, we got to take a quick break. But we'll be back with Fantasy Talk with Chris Ventura right after this. And we are back on Got You Covered Sports. We were talking off camera, guys, and by us I mean Nate Rawlings, the numbers guy, Danny B, the guru of everything in gambling and sports talk, and Mr. Chris Ventura, the fantasy guy, and I'm Matt McCarthy. And guys, we were talking much to my displeasure about soccer.
You're
right?
disinterested. The
Off-
rugby
off
guy.
camera. I'm a rugby guy. What can I say? Tackle soccer is what rugby is.
Right.
And Danny, you were talking about how this is a big gambling thing.
Well, it's huge. Soccer's the most bet on sport globally. Chris, this is your area. I enjoy watching it. I don't know enough about it, but I do know one thing. They bet the hell out of it.
Right, right. Especially the World Cup. I mean, it happens only once every 4 years. So, you get this 1 month to actually. And I think a ton of people just roll their money into this because it's very easy to do. Every game's on TV, and they're on again at night, too. They replay it. So, it's fun, especially if you're don't really have a team. Like this year, Italy's not in it. USA's not in it. I have no bias towards it. I wouldn't really watch it otherwise, so that's why I want to get involved in the betting side of it. So you want to look at these, on OddsShark, MyBookie, all these places. Or I don't know if you have it on your site. Do you throw those up there?
Not yet, but we are working on it. You see, due to my radio contract, I can't put a lot of gambling content just yet, but we will now, though.
Okay.
since the
We'll on
laws have changed.
GotYouCoveredSports.com.
Got you covered with sports. And so, yeah, you're looking at these teams. You got all these different things. You can bet the futures, the prop bets, the players, top goal scorer, who's going to win the World Cup. Some of the odds are crazy. And people just like to bet it because in years past, I know even World Cup, even Euro Cups, which happens every 4 years as well in between, I've made a decent amount of money doing it. Putting $200 down to win $1,200 on a parlay for a 2-game match that day. So I think it's very interesting. I don't know how interested people are in exact bets, but I'll tell you right now, I think that certain bets like Belgium and France, who are plus 700 and I believe plus 750 to win the whole thing. So you put 100 down, you get $700. I think that's a pretty good bet considering they're both favorites. They're not top favorites. Brazil and Germany are. They're plus 330 and 380.
Matty?
Can we bet on which team takes more dives during the course of a game?
No,
He's
but
going to get into the dives.
what, no, Chris, there's a
wish
guy
you
on
could.
Twitter I'd like you to follow. His handle is the Dyna Mafia.
Okay.
Greek guys, they own a string of restaurants in my area.
How do you spell that for the folks at home, Dan?
Dyna Mafia.
Dinermafia.
Mafia. You know, with the mafia, how to spell mafia. They're fantastic. Go on Twitter, and he shows his hand. Very good. He kills it. He really
Kills
does.
it in the soccer in the realm?
Yeah, he
Okay.
loves soccer. He's my guy for soccer, the Dyna Mafia.
All right, I'm going to look him up. Nate, I think you had a question about the World Cup.
Oh, yeah. Well, so again, as somebody who has very little familiarity with betting, I do have a decent familiarity with soccer. I played it for growing up, about 10, 15 years. And to me, it was so difficult to track the statistics within it because there were so many different variables that influenced it. So I feel like totals would be something that's very difficult and volatile to do. But also with games that can routinely go scoreless for 90 minutes, yet one team gets dominated by the other one. I
Right.
feel like it's got to be very difficult because a really good example would be Germany and the Belgium and the United States in the last World Cup when Tim Howard goes off and breaks the tournament record for most saves in it.
Right.
And yes, they wound up losing. It was 0-0 though going into overtime, and then
Right.
they lost 2-1, I think it was. So,
Yes.
how do you even begin to go about trying to anticipate what kind of data you're going to be dealing with?
So, like you said, there's not a ton of stats, even though stats have grown over the years. This kind of goes for hockey, too. There wasn't really a lot. You have assists, you have goals, you have things like that, you know. You got shots blocked.
Right.
Same thing in soccer. All those things are the same. You look at stats like that, but you really want to watch the game. It's like one of those things, like kind of like football, where it's not like baseball, where you can look at literally every stat you can learn about a guy. You almost don't even have to watch it because there's so many stats, right? XFIP and all this stuff. Whereas soccer, you got to watch the game. You got to see what players are doing. You got to see how these teams gel together. Sometimes a team that's weak, for instance, the last Euro Cup, right? Team Iceland. Iceland has, like, I don't know, 350,000 people live in that country. There's nobody there. Yet they went to the semifinals of the Euro Cup. They were like one of the worst odds in the tournament. So whoever bet on them won a ton of money. But their chemistry was better than everybody else's. Chemistry is a major part
Absolutely.
of soccer.
Absolutely.
This is 11 on 11.
Frozen assets in Iceland?
Frozen asset. No, they are building a very big youth program, and that was a big part of it because that's what they're doing. They're making indoor soccer stadiums for youth movement of them having a great future soccer team, and it's showing on the field. And they're in the World Cup as well. So these little things mean a lot. So people are going to bet teams like Argentina with Messi on it and Ronaldo on it
Right.
because the big players are there, but that's not everything. You got to watch these games, watch how they play, and I think that's the biggest part. I think you want to watch, and where it's being played. It's in Russia. So the climate there, the Eastern European teams are going to have an advantage because they've been playing there
Climate.
all the time. Right, climate is
Yeah.
a big part of it for the World Cup.
Getting back to an earlier thread, would you bet the Braves if they were traveling to Russia to play a game against the Padres?
Well, I mean, you'd have to go and look in with the political structure there. There's a very real chance that the game could be rigged.
There's
No.
another thing. That's true.
Touche.
Yeah.
Touche. I know, Matty, across the river, our hometown, they're really building up soccer fields. You know, when I left that place, they didn't think about soccer. Now, years later, the fields are beautiful. What's that field right over the Lincoln Tunnel?
That is the Weehawken Stadium.
Right.
Weehawken, home of the
remember we
Weehawken
played
Indians.
baseball? There was nothing but rocks and dirt on
Done a
that
real
field.
nice
Now
job
it's a
there.
nice turf. You seen it,
Yeah.
Chris?
I've passed by and
Oh,
I know what you're
beautiful.
talking about.
It's really beautiful. I'm
Literally
jealous.
right over the Lincoln Tunnel.
I remember I had stitches from that field many times. That was horrible. But they're really promoting soccer. Maybe because the element, there's a lot of Europeans now in the area. Back when we were growing up, there wasn't as many.
And you know, the United States is getting better, I think. I mean, they didn't make it this year, which is a real disappointment. And I think that's going to hurt the U.S. Viewership, I think, a little bit. But, you know, they'll be back again. They always usually make it. And I think the last World Cup, they made it pretty far. Like you said, I think they made it to is that 2010?
14.
2014, yeah. 2010, they made it, I think, to the quarterfinals and lost to Uruguay.
Well, let's
So
not
they made
forget,
it pretty
though,
far.
The women's team, too. We have the most dominant women's team
Right.
in the history of the tournament.
Yeah.
You
So this is going to help
the
us.
The thing is, it's a
like soccer.
cheap sport. You only need a ball and a
Exactly.
space, right? Same thing.
And you got
with
to be
kinda
in
like
shape.
basketball.
You got to be in shape
You gotta be in
because they're
shape. No, I'm
running
just
all
saying,
over that
it's-
place. It's active. There's action all the time too.
Right.
Nate, can you do live betting in soccer?
I mean, I don't. If they offer it,
You think you'd be able to? Because this guy come up the other day. I'm watching, I think, the Cubs game with him, and he's pretending he's betting $10,000 a game on the Cub game, live betting. I think we racked in like $1 million in the first 5 innings.
Well, I figured out how
Insane.
to make perfect bets, though. You get bets that literally are guaranteed against loss.
Let him explain because I got a headache already,
Okay,
but it
hold on.
works.
Hold on. We do have to take a quick break. Speaking
Hold
of
that
millions.
thought, then. Hold that thought.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back with more on Gotcha Covered Sports after this. And we are back on Gotcha Covered Sports. Danny B, Chris Ventura, Matt McCarthy, and Nate Rawlings.
Like the
Gentlemen,
baseball.
back in, like the Rawlings baseball. That's right, and gloves and sporting equipment. They'll be a sponsor next week. We left off talking about the possibility of soccer and live betting during soccer. Nate, what's the skinny on that?
Well, I don't know the particulars of if it's offered, but I'll look into it. And if it's there,
You'll figure
why
it
not make
out.
some money off it?
Listen, give him
Yeah.
a task and he'll figure it out.
And he had a short, succinct answer, Dan. We like that.
That was good.
We like that.
Medication's working then.
Yeah, and you know what
He spent the night with Dr. Bobby last night.
I need his REM technique.
So, Dan, he also said earlier, and I want to make a slight correction. You said, Nate, that you weren't familiar
No,
with
you said
gambling.
Spider. You said Spider. I didn't say nothing
You
about
said I'm
Spider.
okay, Spider, but he is
Say
familiar
okay.
with gambling. But he said, you mean you're not next to the guru, the genius, which you're learning from. But next to Joe Public on the street, you might not be
I mean,
considered an amateur when it comes to sports betting and
maybe
gambling.
not now from
right?
picking Danny's brain, but I mean,
Stealing my last brain cells is what he's done. He's
You gotta
taken the
pass 'em
last
on.
brain
You
cell I
You can't
have.
take them with you, Dan. You got to
Feeding
pass
off
them
of
on.
each other.
You're just generously sharing it. It's a nice donation. But no, I mean, I couldn't read a plus minus. I had no idea what a plus minus was, though, until April of this year. I didn't understand what totals meant. I didn't over under. Wasn't sure what that was too. I mean, I heard the terms. And I had no idea what any of them meant, and I still don't even know all the ways to bet.
And look how far you've come in the
Exactly.
month of May. 3,200 hunch in a month if
Four,
you're doing
4
$100
months from
a
now,
game,
5
right?
months from now, you're going to be
1 year under the belt and more data. Data
Yeah.
thrives this machine. The blender, I like to call it. That's all it thrives on is
I feel like
data.
a full year of learning. Like we're profiting off of it right now, which is awesome. But I feel like you need to get every year experience because you were explaining the value of experience, and I'm getting more consistent even just now, and it's just within a short time. So it'd be fun to see what I can do when I actually have some real experience.
I'm looking forward to it. Definitely.
Excellent. Speaking of experience, we have our experienced fantasy guy here who's not going to throw us for a curve.
He wears hats like me. I like the Hackies. Now he's got the Rockies.
Rockies.
Oh, is that Barry
Well, there you
Beck's
go,
Colorado
Baltimore.
Rockies ice hockey team before they became the New Jersey Devils? I don't think so.
So how about some fantasy tips for us, Nate? I'm sorry, Nate. He'll probably have some. He'll have some tips.
sure he will.
I got this kid's name stuck in my brain. I got to shake
So
it
you're
out.
used to yelling at me.
Chris Ventura, Danny B. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, right now, obviously, we're in the midst of the baseball season, but football's coming up. You know, teams are all set. So we're talking fantasy football. Now's the time to really dig in deep and see what teams, who has what, who's got, the best running back depth charts, who's going to start. This is when you start developing and joining leagues.
Sure.
There's things called best ball leagues out there where you can join them now, right? You draft like 25 players as opposed to 15, let's say. And you're drafting players that you don't even know if they're going to play
Right.
when the season starts. But you have an inclination, you know what I'm saying? So when the season does start, these best ball leagues, you don't even have to set your roster. They just plug in the top guys for you automatically.
Sure.
This is in the NFFC, it's called, the National Fantasy Football Championship site. And other leagues do this as well. But I think that's a good way to get into it right now. If you're big into football, and football is the most, obviously the biggest fantasy sport. I would look into an NFFC, things like that, where you could get into these best ball leagues. If you have an inclination now, you want to get into it now, and you're tired of baseball, let's say, do it. Get some leagues together. They're cheap. Some of them are $25 a league. You could win, a good amount of money. Some of them even more.
I got a question. Rosen, Jeff, what's his name? Rosen from UCLA. How do they pronounce it?
Josh
Rosen?
Rosen.
Rosen.
Mm-hmm.
Since Bradford's injury prone, and it's probably going to go down after 3 or 4 games, is there any value in taking him on the roster?
Oh, yeah. In a best ball league like that type of format where there's deep rosters, you got 15 guys in the league as opposed to, let's say, 12 or something like that. You have these deep rosters. You draft guys. Last year, I drafted Deshaun Watson. Okay, now he wasn't starting at the beginning of the year. I mean, we all thought he'd eventually come in.
He killed it when he was on the
And
field.
when he came in, he killed it. He killed it for me as well. They plug him right in. Guys like Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams, those guys were backups before the season because Jay Ajayi was on the Miami Dolphins. He got traded to the Philadelphia Eagles or let go, or whatever the case was. And then Kenyon Drake became a thing. These are guys you want to think about and draft prior because you want the backup. Sometimes they come in. There's a ton of injuries in football, like in a lot of sports, but football more so than not. You know what I mean?
Look, should we put him on the spot?
No, I want to ask him a question. How many people, in your opinion, that are playing fantasy will transition to sports betting, single game sports betting?
I think most people would do both. Even though for some people fantasy is like a niche thing, like they just like the players themselves
Controlling it.
I mean, the real difference is betting games as opposed to betting players specifically
Right.
on what they're doing, right? I mean, there's really not a huge difference, right? But you have to have the knowledge for it. You have to do a lot of research. You have to study. And I think that it will transition well, especially when it becomes legal. And people need to take advantage of this World Cup opportunity, this 1 month where soccer is very exciting. One goal means the world. One goal means the world. It's very exciting to watch. So it keeps you interested, even though
Sure.
a lot of people might say it's boring. Oh, well, one goal is all it is. I think it's the opposite of
Right.
boring, to be honest.
Have you ever been to a World Cup or been involved in Germany? I was in the military, 1982.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what teams were involved. I'm assuming it was Germany. 'Cause
West Germany?
I was involved. I was at the train station, and a riot broke out over the World Cup. I've never seen an insane scene. I had to hide. People get killed in these things.
You know why?
Yes.
Why?
Because the sport is so boring. You sit there for hours and you're lucky to see one goal. Everybody is killing each other because they're hammered in the stands. Whereas you go to a rugby match,
Yeah, what's the score in a
nations
rugby?
all sit together and you got a violent sport.
You guys
on
are
the
too
field and everybody
touchy-feely
gets
for me.
along.
Too
But-
touchy-feely.
That
I got into a rugby huddle last week, and some guy was feeling up my shoulder. I didn't like it.
What's a normal rugby
Look
score?
at you, for God's sakes. You're gorgeous.
What's a normal rugby score? Like a normal game, the
It's
score?
like football, American football.
So like a 21-17 type
You
game?
could have a defensive struggle. You could have, in the current Major League Rugby, which is the professional rugby here in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of points scored. There's like 46 to 38.
And it's 6 points per.
You get 5 for putting it in, and
Yeah.
you got to touch it down when you're in there. Otherwise, I can carry you out. That's why they call it in football a touchdown.
So this
Right.
that's Aussie rules football when they do it. It's this
So
big.
why do they wear the little suit? Is it? They
That's
go to-
Aussie rules
do
football,
they go to
so I
church
can't
after they
answer
go
for
to-
that.
Okay.
I live in the try.
Actually, the
entertainment
rugby
value.
crowd, I hung out with some of the guys last week, and they're all good dudes. They love to drink.
We
They're
do-
definitely
we do a
tough.
little bit-
They
little
are
bit.
tough. They are
Oh,
tough.
yeah. You got to be tough to play that sport, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it also important where you touch it down, though?
It is. You have to touch it down. Wherever you touch it down, that's where it's brought out directly for the conversion. So you'll see guys run in, and imagine a guy running into the end zone in the NFL. Instead of diving and over the plane, or he wants to run it under the goalpost so that the kicker's conversion comes out straight from there.
So there's a strategy in
That's interesting.
scoring.
Yeah,
mean
you
like when
wanna
people had
score
Bo
under the
Jackson in
post,
that
so
video
'cause
game?
The kicker comes out 22 meters.
And how
What's it called?
far can somebody kick a rugby ball?
Guys are hitting kicks.
40, 50 yards?
One guy hit a drop kick from call it 48 yards
That's
in the rain for Ireland against France in Paris.
Wasn't that like
to
on the
win
run,
the
though?
match.
Aren't
Johnny
those drop kicks
Sexton.
on the run?
You just got very excited about
Nate's
that.
asking you a question
Unbelievable.
about drop
Aren't they
kicking.
like moving though? Like
Yeah.
it's live
did it
action.
on the run. I mean,
it would be
they're-
like it's not like you're on the 4th down and you're calling a field goal team. You're getting it. It's all of a sudden he's just sitting there like, let's go for a kick.
Well, that's the option that the one instance I was just talking about. This guy hitting the kick on the run in the rain in France, in Paris against France for Ireland to win the game, and it was just about at midfield.
The luck of the Irish.
But the other thing is, when you have the opportunity to go for posts if there's a penalty, and these guys are kicking, but it's on an angle or it's all the way back. But some of these guys are. That's why they transition into NFL punters.
Is there a lot of stoppage like the NFL or no?
No, it's
NFL's
like
always
soccer.
Oh,
stop
they
and go.
stop
Okay.
for
Like
drink. They
football
got to
plus the
stop for a
soccer.
drink.
No, but there's
Oh,
no.
so
It's
does
like soccer
soccer.
stop.
You guys carry little flasks in your thing? I know because they love
It's
everyone.
like a combo of soccer and football
Dare
almost,
you?
right?
How dare you? We're going to put an integrity clause.
No,
on
actually,
it.
I think they're tough son of a
They
you know
really are.
what's. And they're all a bunch of good dudes. Honestly, I got to laugh at them. Most of them are European, Welsh, and
Well, not most of them, but he met one Welsh guy.
you're the only
Not
one
all
that's
of them
you're the
will.
only one I met that didn't have a
right.
brogue to him.
As long as
And
they
you
don't
talk,
Welsh on a
you
bet.
talk worse than I do, or
Yeah,
as
Kermit
bad
the
as.
Frog
Actually,
slash-
you've trained your English got better than mine over the years. I never lost that the Jersey side of your mouth type
Yeah.
of Joe
Yeah.
Pesci shit.
Hey, how you doing?
I
It's
cursed.
all right. We could do that too. How you doing?
I
But guys,
Acting.
we are getting screamed at by
Are we?
Greg
We're
Sussman
getting the hell outta
downstairs.
here?
didn't hear that.
Final thoughts, final tips,
No,
perhaps.
just
A
look
free
forward
tip?
to Delaware again. We tipped off on Tuesday. A good day to start it off. Looking forward to football. Looking forward to little R&R before everything gets hectic. And Got You Covered's going to cover everything from soccer, football, baseball, horse racing, anything. The expression "got you covered" means whatever you're looking for, we got you covered.
Chris?
My final tip, back to World Cup, I'd say you're going to take someone, my suggestion, France plus 550 to win the World
Well, I
Cup.
got one for you too. I'm sorry.
I put, a couple hundred on that. You win over $1,000. And Belgium, who are, they are plus 700.
Nice. My guy, I'm not going to mention names. What he calls himself Robin Hood because he likes to take from the books and give back to the public. So his name is Robin Hood. He tells me the Cardinals at over 5.5 wins is a solid bet based upon their scheduling early. He assumes they're going to get out of the first 4 games. I think 3 out of the 4 are at home. So he's looking at a quick 2 to 3 wins right out the chute.
This is the football Cardinals. folks.
Arizona.
This is
yeah.
the football Cardinals, right? And I expect Bradford to get hurt, and I think Rosen's going to step up. I think he's the third string, right? He's not.
Rosen, I think, should be second, but we're going to see. That's going to all get shaked out in camp.
because Bradford's going to get hurt. You know that he'll get
Yeah.
hurt. He'll trip on something, and look,
Yeah.
his eyes. He tells the story. He's scared. You ever look in his eyes? The eyes tell a story.
Which kid?
Bradford.
Bradford, yeah.
Sam Bradford.
He did have that one good year with Minnesota, though. Where
Yes.
he threw like 4 and 5 interceptions, something like that. 20
Had some
something
good
touchdowns.
years with the Rams, one could argue.
Yeah, I mean, he was like a game manager.
I
He
don't-
wasn't the guy he was supposed to be.
I can't justify somebody getting that type of money out the door
Yeah.
before they're proven it. It
Look at
gets
Matt
me
Leonard.
He was the
sick.
first pick overall.
Gets me sick to my stomach. Gets me sick. I'm sick over it.
I'm getting sick too here because we're out of time. But
We out of here?
yeah, we're just about out of time. But Dan, I know this is going to take us a long time. But do we have final words from Nate?
Nate.
Well,
That took a long time just to
Yeah,
get
no,
to the
that's-
final words.
a little bit. We know I'm not a huge expert on a lot of this stuff yet, so rather I'll just leave you on a little fun fact that popped in my head. We were talking about Iceland, and Iceland. You said about frozen assets.
Yes.
And it's funny because Iceland actually is the much more fertile, good farmland between Iceland and
Greenland,
Greenland.
yep.
It was one of the earliest propaganda
go.
stunts
Eric the
over in
Red.
Europe. They named them differently to get more people to target Greenland versus Iceland.
Because Greenland is really Iceland. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What's the temperature right now, Nate?
the temperature right now, warm enough.
Nate, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it was Eric the Red that did that naming of Greenland and Iceland because he didn't want anyone to go to Iceland and he wanted everybody to go to Greenland. Google it.
Is that what you just said, too?
He didn't say Eric the Red.
Eric
said-
the Red.
I
specifically
didn't name
said
the
it was
guy.
Eric the Red.
Who's
I've
Eric
got
the
no
Red?
idea.
Yeah.
I would guess Leif Erikson
All right,
just from
that's
watching
a cliffhanger
SpongeBob.
that we're leaving
Any
you with on
parting
Got You
notes? You
Covered
want to
Sports.
talk some Scientology with the kid or anything? I'm sure he has answers. You want to talk about global warming?
Dinosaurs
good.
were discovered in 1824.
1824?
There you go.
All right, there you have it.
They have-
We really, truly do have you got you covered.
We
folks.
really do. It's not just about sports no more. It's about Ask Nate. Remember Ask Jeeves?
Ask Jeeves.
The hell with Jeeves.
I
We
like
got
it.
Nate. Ask
Ask
Jeeves.
Nate.
He's a walking Google on 2 legs.
I'm really interested in the REM thing.
Oh, good.
Really,
I'll show
really.
you the app after.
Have a little sidebar with him, Chris. Have a little sidebar after the
A
setting.
whole episode.
All right, guys.
Sleep half of it.
Danny,
I'm just happy to be back in the city, and I'm looking forward to getting the hell out of the city at the same time.
excellent. Chris
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
and Nate,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you very much. He's zipping it, folks. On behalf of these gentlemen, I'm Matt McCarthy, Danny B, Chris Ventura, and Nate Rawlings for Got You Covered Sports. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.